Oh, it's just me. Fear.
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. Psalms chapter 27, verses 1 through 4, KJV.
You know, some of you have just gotten so accustomed to it. You wear it around like a badge of honor. You make peace with it. You joke about it. You buy a ticket to experience it. You make slogans out of it. But do we really understand just how dangerous and crippling fear really is? And why God says in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." That's right. Fear is a spirit, and it is such a nasty thing that Jesus says, "I did not give you that. That is not of me." So if it is not of God, then it must be of the devil. According to an article on Wikipedia, fear is described as an intensely unpleasant emotion in response to perceiving or recognizing a danger or threat. Fear causes physiological changes that may produce behavioral reactions such as mounting an aggressive response or fleeing the threat. Fear in human beings may occur in response to a certain stimulus occurring in the present or in anticipation or expectation of a future threat perceived as a risk to oneself. The fear response arises from the perception of danger leading to confrontation with or escape from, avoiding the threat, also known as the fight or flight response, which in extreme cases of fear, horror, and terror can be a freeze response or paralysis. Fear is such a force that the Lord actually gives you deliverance from it. Psalms chapter 34, verses 4. "I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears." And if one doesn't get on top of it, it can serve as a portal for other spirits to come through, such as the spirit of bondage. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 15, "And deliver them who through fear of death were, their entire lifetime, subject to bondage." We can also see this in characters in the Bible. Job spoke of his fear and what other spirits traveled through: despair, accusation, sickness, and death, which brought total chaos and destruction to his life. In Job chapter 1, verses 4 through 5, "And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually." And Job chapter 3, verses 24 through 26. "For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came." Because Job had such a reverence for the Lord, he was continually in intercession for his children, for fear they may have done some trespass against him. But as Job lamented the trouble he tried to ward off, opening his mouth with prayer and supplication and thanksgiving, this thing he greatly feared, came anyway. Is it possible that this fear is what drew Satan to him in the first place? As Satan said when God asked if he had considered his servant Job, he said he had and tried to get in, but the hedge he had put up around him he could not penetrate. Peter feared, and what did this cause him to do? Deny Christ. His actions led him to fall into complete despair, abort his destiny, forgetting everything he had seen, heard, and learned when he walked with Christ, and went back to his old life. Remember, The devil had asked Jesus if he could sift Peter as wheat. But Jesus also told Peter that he had prayed for him and said, when he is converted, strengthen his brethren. He was saying, Peter, I have granted Satan's request, as he granted Satan's request when he asked to do the same thing to Job. However, Jesus made it clear to Peter that he was going to get through it, and when he does, he will be the source of strength for his brothers and sisters in Christ. Luke chapter 22, verses 28 through 34. Ye are they which have continued with me in my temptations, and I appoint unto you a kingdom, as my Father hath appointed unto me, that ye may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And the Lord said,
Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren.
And he said unto him, Lord, I am ready to go with thee, both into prison and to death. And he said,
I tell thee, Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before that thou shalt thrice deny that thou knowest me.
We also see from these verses that Jesus also let Peter know, despite his bold speech concerning his willingness to follow Jesus even unto death, that he was going to falter and that the sifting was going to begin. In Luke chapter 22, verses 54 through 62. And it reads, Then took they him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house. And Peter followed afar off. And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall, and were set down together, Peter sat down among them. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him, and said, This man was also with him. And he denied him, saying, Woman, I know him not. And after a little while another saw him, and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth, this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew. And the Lord turned and looked upon Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. When God spoke on the mountain to them, the Israelites, they said, We'd rather hear Moses, because they were so shaken by God's appearing, they feared they would die. In Exodus chapter 20, verses 18 through 22. And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings, and the noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said unto Moses, Thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. The Israelites feared God to the point it affected their ability to receive the full blessings of their Father. It is written that we are to have a healthy fear of the Lord, a reverence for him, as we see with Moses and his relationship with God in Psalms chapter 25, verses 12 through 15. What man is he that feareth the Lord? Him shall he teach in the way that he shall choose. His soul shall dwell at ease, and his seed shall inherit the earth. The secret of the Lord is with them that fear him, and he will show them his covenant. Mine eyes are ever toward the Lord, for he shall pluck my feet out of the net. But with the Israelites, they never trusted God. So this was a different type of fear they held for him. This distrust is why God had to prove himself to them continuously. They were always accusing God of trying to kill them. Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 4. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin, after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses, and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, Why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water. And the people murmured against Moses, and said, Wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. But as Moses said to them in Exodus chapter 20, verses 18 through 22, God was simply trying to prove them as to keep them from sin. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 12 through 13, And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee? But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command thee this day, for thy good. After all God had done for them, it had become clear that the Israelites were simply a rebellious people, and their fear and distrust of God eventually led them to abort their inheritance, the Promised Land, and ultimately led to them rejecting God as their leader, later opting for a man to be over them as their king. Elijah feared for his life when Jezebel vowed to take his life when Ahab had informed her of how Elijah had slain all of her prophets. This fear led him to go on the run, and he fell into such despair that he asked God to take his life, saying he was no better than his fathers. In 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 4. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods also to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow, about this time. And when he saw that, he arose, and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for him that he might die, and said, It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. Fear is such a powerful force and imposing and formidable spirit that various leaders, kings, and pharaohs throughout the Bible have used fear to keep God's people in bondage and to try to force the severing of their ties and relationship with the Lord. The king said to the 3 Hebrew boys, who, by the way, was set over the affairs of the province of Babylon by the king, Bow and worship the golden image with everyone else, or burn in the fiery furnace. They refused, without hesitation, not allowing fear to make them forsake the confidence that they had in the one true and living God. They cared not for their positions, nor regarded the king, nor felt any allegiance to him over God. Although some may have felt like because the king gave them high-ranking positions, some may have obeyed the king's demands in order to save their positions and not embarrass the king in this way. And many would have certainly done it to save their lives, but even that fear tactic didn't work. In Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 23. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. The king really put on a performance to get these boys to back down. He had the furnace turned up so hot that the men were to throw them in burned up. He commanded his most mighty men to bind up the 3 boys. Isn't that just like Satan? Why were they being bound anyway? I guess so they couldn't run away. Nebuchadnezzar's visage changed from that of just showing anger to fuming when they refused his request to his face. All of these things were so they could see and be fearful at what they saw and bow to the devil. Daniel, as many of us know, was thrown in the lion's den because he refused to stop worshiping God even for a moment, despite the fact that he knew there were those who were gathering together to present the king with a decree to sign that they were going to use to set him up. It was their way of saying, "We dare you to pray to your God now. You'll be thrown to the lions." Satan hates it when you worship God and will go to great lengths to end you when you do it with your whole heart. But instead of waiting until the 30 days were over, or at least pray in secret, Daniel waited till the king's decree was signed, and once it was, he made it his business to pray in a way where everybody could see. In Daniel chapter 16, verses 6 through 10. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said thus unto him, "King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors and the princes, the counselors and the captains, having consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree, that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not." Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. Daniel proved his worship was authentic, and did not let their fear tactics move him, and because of this act of faith in his God, the one he serves ended up getting all the glory. In your face, Satan. Daniel survived by the hand of an angel that was sent to protect him in the den, and when the king discovered what had happened, he had a change of heart. Daniel chapter 6, verses 23 through 26. Then was the king exceeding glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. And the lions had the mastery of them, and brake all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, and languages, that dwell in all the earth, Peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree, that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. Pharaoh refused to let the children of Israel go so that they may worship God. His refusal led God to harden his heart so that God could make his sovereignty known to all. As we all know, God sent the plagues, and finally Pharaoh agreed to let the children go. But then God had him harden his heart again, which led to the epic parting of the Red Sea, where the Israelites escaped, but Pharaoh's pursuing army perished.